Hello everyone, welcome to this new part of the Cinema 4D course. And well, we'll keep working on the UV maps. I'm going to show you an alternative to doing these using Cinema 4D and also how to easily do this procedure on one object we have here using 3D Code, which is a program quite focused on this job in particular. Maybe you know the program. Besides 3D Code, there's also other type of programs which were created for this specific task, like for example, TopoGun. Even Blender has a specific module to deal with UV maps. In this case, as I said, we'll see 3D Code. Before that, I'll explain an alternative way of doing this procedure in Cinema 4D with the sombrero, for example. So we have the sombrero, and notice we removed the UV maps tag, okay? This one right here, we removed it. Let's go to the UV Edit Layout. Remember that what we'll do here is use the Paint Setup Wizard tool to select everything and select the sombrero. Next, Finish. And so we have here the resulting UV map, okay? As I was saying, there's another option to this procedure, which goes like this. We click on the Edge Mode button, and from here, we'll start selecting the following edges. We can also detach this panel in order to choose the Loop Selection tool. And each selection we do will be some kind of cut, or we'll tell the program where to cut the textures. For example, let's make a cut here, or selection. Another one here, one more in the base. Then again, one more here, and another one here. And the center of the object too. Like this. All right. Good. Now these right here will have this option selected, LSCM. So we make sure this box is checked. Cut selected edges. Okay. This one too, and click Apply. Okay, now if we get back to the UV polygons editing mode, we'll see that Cinema 4D cut the map a different way. Following the shape of the cuts we highlighted with the selection tool, the program translated those selections into cuts and it placed it in the 2D map. Notice that now we have the base here. Why? Because we pinpointed we want a cut here. So if we go back to the UV polygons editing mode, we'll notice this part is separated off the base, all right? This, as I was saying, is another way of doing this using the edges. Now, as always, we could fill the texture and paint it and export it like we previously did. Okay, let's go back to the standard layout. I'm going to hide the tortilla. And we'll see another example with a dish. In Cinema 4D, whenever we find kind of bent polygons, we'll have certain problems to get the UV map automatically using the Paint Setup Wizard tool, okay? There's a solution to that in which we'll learn how to work with it, which is through the projections. But in this case, through the frontal projection. So let's select the dish for a moment. Switch to the UV Edit Layout. And we see we have the selection we previously did, which you didn't see. But I'll explain a bit how we can do it. We can go to the Projection tab, as you know, and make different types of projections. Depending on the object, we'll be able to do one or another. Anyway, when working in low poly, the most traditional way of doing it is how we've seen, using box projection, the Paint Setup Wizard tool, selecting the cuts, okay? But with more complex elements, there are another procedures. In this case, with the dish, for example, there's a pretty good option, which is using the frontal projection. If you use a frontal projection, we'll see an exact projection of this object. In this case, if we switch the camera view to top and we click frontal projection, we automatically take all these polygons, the ones we projected on this image, And we've already placed them here. Okay, now we press E, and I can move these around my environment. All right? Good. Let's take an example so you can appreciate it properly. I'm going to select this, and we'll create a new texture. Click OK, and we select the dish. Let's make a frontal projection, all right? Select the front view. That is what we're seeing, okay? Remember, we're on the top view camera. And now go to the Layers tab, create a new layer, as always, or two, depending on the colors we want, and hit the Fill Polygons button so they get filled. Now switch to the bottom view camera, and we do the same. View Mapping tab, Frontal, and now we take these and place it. Notice that if I enlarge the view, the projection gets bigger. So this is also important. Try not to move the camera so they're the same size. It was around this far, so the size is the same. Frontal. Okay, and we place it. And well, if it's slightly smaller, remember that using the T key, we can make this bigger, like this. Now we would go to the Layers tab, and we would paint it white or another color. So we differentiate it from the top. For this, we could just create a new layer, and we would paint a new layer using another color. Okay? Obviously, the disadvantage is that this method only works with some objects, quite flat objects, or that we can work the texture in that projection. All right? In other kind of objects, like the sombrero, for example, this wouldn't work. Okay? All right, so having seen this, we'll work with two more examples in 3D Code so you can see an alternative in order to work the UV maps in a different program. Okay? We're going to switch to the perspective camera, and we'll do the process on the sombrero and the tortilla, okay? In order to make this example properly, we'll take the sombrero, for example, Control Z, and we create a new document, okay? And we paste it here. We remove this tag, and we'll save this object as OBJ, okay? This is just an example for you to see it, so you don't have to name it or anything. Let's press OK and launch 3D Code, okay? We can go to their website and download a free 30 days trial to work with this program. When you install it, you open it, and this window will pop up. Here we can go to the UV Map Mesh section, or we can go click on Import Model for per pixel painting also. Any one of the options is good. Click on it, and we'll load the sombrero. Here we can set the size of the texture. We enter a custom size, or we can select one of the default values like 2K or 4K. In Cinema 4D, we had it in 1080, so we can enter 1080. We don't change any of the other options, okay? Click OK, and as you see, this panel automatically opens with different options. Here we have different tabs that we won't use. We'll just work on the UV tab, none of the others. As we see, we have the object here, and we have the projections. And if I hover the mouse over them, I can see how this is made, okay? So we have the option to mark in a similar way to the one we used in Cinema 4D the cuts or make some selections. If I click here, since I have selected edge loops, I will make a cut around all this part. Take a look, this is green. If I hold Control and click on it, I tell the program I want to remove this cut. So as you see, we can check in this window what we're doing. Notice that there is a hole in the center of the UV preview window, which would obviously be this part here. So let's check that in the UV preview, we can see there's an error. Like, let's see here. So notice here there's an error, and this error happens because there's this part here selected also. Okay, so now I control click this and I remove all these, okay? Notice that now I see in the preview that the UV map is better projected now. Same here, there's another problem, so I do this, and we'd have all these in an only texture. Okay, we remove all these. Check that there's no green spot. Here, for example, remove. And these two. Now we have all this green selected zone. Cut out. I'm going to cut this out too. Here. There it is. Now it's perfect. If we now want this rim to be separate, we would just have to use the loop option and click here. So we now transform these in a different texture, which would reflect in our UV map. And the green part, as you see, it's a different one. This here looks bad because we need to make a cut, so we simply, for example, click in any of these edges. There. When we clicked on it, we see in the preview that the texture looks flat and nice. See that when I hover the mouse over it, the polygon highlights in the preview. This would be the other one. Here's the sombrero cut in different ways. And this, for example, we can manage it differently. For example, I can decide I want to remove these cuts in the sombrero. So holding Control, I click on this edge, this one, and this one. So now in the preview window, there's the sombrero, or this part of the sombrero already together. This, for example, if we want to draw something on all this side, having the texture like this would make it easier to work on it, unlike if we had the sides separate from each other. Now, for example, each piece is separate, so as you see, each piece is different. Here's the same. For example, let's say I want the bottom to be projected separate. Then just mark these edges using Shift to add to the selection. And notice on the right that I'm actually cutting. And finally, this one here, when you have all the shape done, it transforms in a different projection. Whenever we have all of these done, we just hit Unwrap, wait for it, and we get the definitive texture, as we had it in Cinema 4D, completely finished and ready for us to paint in Photoshop. Check it out. I still can modify it. For example, I don't want this part to be separate. I want these to be the same. Then we just Control click it, and we remove the cut like this. And we would do the same. Notice the bottom is a whole piece now. As you see, just by using these options, we're capable of carrying out this procedure. All right, now we would just export it. But before, we should click the Pack UV option. Okay? Notice that the checkerboards are perfectly projected. All these squares we see here. And now we would simply go to File, Export Objects, and Textures. Here is the limitation of the program because it's the free trial. But well, we would basically export the object in OBJ, and then we would load it up in Cinema 4D. And under the UV Maps tab, we'd find the texture map like this. Okay? Well, another example, we'll open the tortilla. So let's go to File, Import, Model for per pixel painting. Click Don't Save. And here we select this object. Remember to set the size here. You can set it to 1080 per 1080, okay? Here's the object. We switch to the UV tab, and as always, the program automatically makes a projection. Okay? In this case, as you can see, it's quite terribly done because we have in this texture different cuts. So using the option Edge Loops and holding the Control key, we keep clicking to remove these cuts. Alright? Like this. This one also, and this one. In order to do this properly, there should be only two colors, green here and another color in the bottom, so we'll do the same here. We keep cutting or removing cuts if necessary. Okay? Notice this one here, like this. And these ones here too. Okay, we'll remove all of these. This way we would easily get the UV maps. Alright? Remember that now we have to click Unwrap and we would automatically get the texture map. Now, as always, we can go to different options, okay? Here we have the option Relax. You notice we can relax a bit the textures of the projections if we click on it. Good. Now we go to the Unwrap option. And we finally export it. So we click Pack UV. And we could definitely go to File, Export Objects and Textures in order to export it in OBJ format for us to load it afterwards in Cinema 4D with the projections already made. Alright? The rest of the objects are the easiest without any doubt, so you won't have any problem doing the rest of them. We did the cactus, which was complicated, the tortilla, the dish, but the rest are very easy objects, and well, we'll fast forward this part while I make some comments. Okay, so let's get the flower. Now, as always, the video will go faster, but well, it's the same procedure. Using the Paint Setup Wizard tool, we get the projection and we keep placing all these bits, each of them apart from the other, to see where these missing pieces go. Notice that there's one missing here. Click Box, and as always, we keep joining them using the Box option. We keep projecting to make them the same size, and now we select them and align them, okay? Create new layer and paint them. Okay, with the next group of petals, we do the same we did before. We lay them out, organize them, and when it's done, we'll switch to the Optimal Mapping tab and realign them. As for the spikes, we'll do the same. It will be very easy. We just align them and it's done. Now we'll see the elements like the rocks, for example, and well, this is very easy. We just project them and then paint them, and then in Photoshop we'll take care of the rest. The cactus arms, well, we don't have to do anything. Just using the Paint Setup Wizard tool works perfectly. And there are loads of elements that just using the tool will work fine. The meat is another example of it. Check it out. So we'll leave this part here, practice quite a lot with the UV mappings, and now in Photoshop we'll start painting all this work. So see you later.